I'm not surprised that Worf and Dax's Star Trek Deep Space Nine wedding didn't have these characters attend. Star Trek Deep Space Nine gave fans one of its most unexpected and dramatic romances when Jadzia, Dax, and Worf fell in love. Their relationship added a layer of passion, conflict, and humor to the often serious tone of DS9. When the series finally celebrated their union in Season 6, you are cordially invited. The wedding was every bit as fiery and chaotic as one would expect from two strong-willed Klingon warriors, especially one who just happened to also be a Trill joined with centuries of past lives. But what struck fans almost as much as the Klingon rituals, bruised egos, and fiery arguments that led up to the ceremony were the faces that were missing. The guest list was surprisingly sparse, with key figures from Worf and Dax's past nowhere to be seen. For longtime Star Trek fans, the absence was glaring. And honestly, I'm not surprised. Worf's Starfleet friends didn't show up. The most obvious group missing from the wedding were Worf's former crewmates from the USS Enterprise D and later the Enterprise E. Having spent years aboard Star Trek, the Next Generation's flagship, Worf had forged deep friendships with Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Geordi LaForge, Deanna Troi, and others. Considering the episode aired only a year after Star Trek First Contact, audiences knew Worf still had strong ties to that crew. So why didn't anyone from the Enterprise attend? From an in-universe perspective, the timing makes sense. The Dominion War was in full swing, and Starfleet wasn't about to spare senior officers for personal events, even those of someone as respected as Worf. Picard and Riker would have been engaged in Federation-wide military strategy. Troi and Geordi were likewise needed aboard their ship. But the real reason is simpler: logistics. DS9 was telling its own story, and including TNG characters in Worf's wedding would have overshadowed the DS9 ensemble. This wasn't about Picard blessing his Klingon officers' union. It was about how DS9's strange found family navigated Klingon traditions. If Picard had been there, he would have drawn the spotlight. Instead, Sisko got to serve as Worf's Federation anchor, and Dax's DS9 friends, Kira, Bashir, O'Brien, and Quark, were the ones who mattered. Curzon, Dax's old Klingon drinking buddies. The second group of missing faces were Curzon, Dax's Klingon friends, the same warriors who had once adored him and treated Jadzia as their comrade when she first arrived at DS9. Kang, Kor, and Koloth, the legendary Klingons of the original series, all had deep ties to Curzon. Their absence at Dax's wedding felt strange. After all, these were warriors who celebrated battles and honor, and a Klingon wedding would have been the perfect excuse for revelry. But again, the Dominion War provides a tidy explanation. Klingons were stretched thin across the Alpha Quadrant, and many of Curzon's old friends were older, retired, or otherwise occupied. By this point in DS9's timeline, Kang was already dead. Blood Oath revealed as much, and Kor was on a different trajectory that would lead to his tragic final stand-in once more unto the breach. Their presence might have been fun, but their absence emphasized the generational shift. This wasn't Curzon's wedding, it was Jadzia's. Jadzia's Federation friends. Another noticeable absence? Anyone from Jadzia's long Starfleet career before DS9. She wasn't some rookie fresh out of the academy. Dax had lifetimes of connections. Surely some of her colleagues or mentors would have made the trip? But the story made it clear that Jadzia's real family was on DS9. Her closest bonds were with Sisko, Kira, and Bashir. Bringing in one-off characters to pad the guest list would have diluted the impact of the core cast's involvement. It also underlined an important theme. Star Trek weddings aren't about spectacle. They're about intimacy. For Jadzia and Worf, what mattered most was the approval of Martok and the loyalty of their immediate circle. Why the absences actually work. The missing faces at Worf and Dax's wedding weren't an oversight. They were intentional. The showrunners wanted to keep the story tightly focused on DS9's ensemble while still exploring Klingon traditions. In fact, the conflict that drives the episode comes entirely from within this circle. Martok's wife Sorella challenging Dax's worthiness, Worf struggling to balance duty and passion, and Sisko reminding Jadzia that her choices have consequences. By excluding the Enterprise crew, the writers ensured that DS9 stood on its own. It wasn't a TNG crossover event. It wasn't about legacy characters blessing the Union. It was about how DS9's quirky, battle-tested family dealt with love in the middle of war. The emotional weight of the wedding. The episode also takes on added poignancy because fans know what comes next. Jadzia's tragic death at the end of Season 6 means this wedding was